Canaia is home to the most ancient civilization in this Minecraft world, and they've always had a major impact on the world around them. Recently, they got so rich that they broke the entire global economy. Hey guys, welcome back to Nations of Minecraft. So today we're talking about Canaia. It's a huge country and I won't be able to go into all of it, but I'll do my best. So let's look at the map. Canaia, or the Kingdom of Canaia, is located in the south, and it's the third most populated country, just under Durlan and Iapeta. Canaia is divided into both states and territories. These are all the states, and these are the territories. Generally, the states are in the region known as Historic Canaia, meaning what used to be part of the ancient Kingdom of Canaia, and these territories are known as modern territories since they were acquired recently. So, most of the people, over 3/4 of them, live in the states or in historic Canaia, and 22% live in the territories. We'll get into the history of that later. So, there are 5 general regions of the states. So, there's a lot of cities. These are the biggest ones, the most important ones, and there are a lot of other smaller towns, tons of them. I've not been to most of them, but supposedly this is where they are. So yeah, there are 5 general regions. The first one is Branalif, and this is like the most industrial region. This is the region that exports the most to other countries. Historically, they made things like clay, bricks, and trains, but recently, Canaia became the country that owned the new Nether, and they've been exporting things like nether brick, or like blackstone nether bricks, and a bunch of other materials that come from the new Nether, and Branalif is the industrial and economic powerhouse of all of Canaia. The next region is Descab, and Descab is also in the north, but they mostly are made of small farms that supply food to Branalif. Canaia does not want to import anything from any other countries, so even though they border Durlan and they can certainly afford to buy food, they don't buy food, they grow their own food. And Descab mostly grows food for Branalif, but mostly Descab does not have as much of an industry as Branalif. They just grow food for themselves and for their neighboring regions. So the next region is Zukesha. Zukesha is known as like the fancier region. It's in the south, and it's home to the biggest city outside of the capital city, the biggest city in the states, which is Lilla Göteborg. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. The name is actually Swedish, because it was founded by a player who joined my world who is from Sweden. So, yeah, that city is on the coast. There's also a lot of forestry, a lot of lumber, a big lumber industry. It makes up Zukesha's economy. Other regions criticize it for, like, deforestation, but they don't actually deforest. They do forestry, meaning they cut down the trees but then replant them. So they're actually a lot more environmentally friendly than, like, Branalif with its, like, factories and stuff. And Zukesha is also home to the royal castle. This is where the king lives. We'll talk more about that later. Next region is Rakansha, and Rakansha is the least populated region, and they do some mining. They supply some coal for the other regions, but they're not that economically active. And the last region is Bamalfi. This is the farming region that supplies the south. They grow some carrots and also some berries, but they don't. Canaia as a whole doesn't export food, they just grow food for themselves. So yeah, those are the 5 regions. And the capital city is not in any of the 5 regions. The capital city is literally hanging off of a cliff, floating in the air. And as you can see, the part that's suspended in the air belongs to Canaia, but the ground below it belongs to Hyperland. So this is the only, like, vertical territory boundary. So yeah, generally there's a big boat culture. As you can see, most of the cities are on the river. So Canaia has more water transportation than any other country. A lot of people get around by boats. There are often even boat lanes in the busiest rivers. So yeah, water transport is a big deal here. They don't really have that many trains. So even though they produce a lot of trains, they don't usually get around by trains. They get around by boats. So these are the biomes of Canaia. So all of the states are located in a spruce taiga biome, and in the territories you have jungle, you have the plateau, which is where the capital is, you have the volcanoes, you have the fields, there's a small little section of a pine forest, and there's also a small fir forest. So this is the population map. Once again, you can see most of the populations clustered around the water. And yeah, there are some cities, it's more rural over here. And this is the jungle where almost nobody lives. And this is a red dot near the capital city. So yeah, this is the population map. This is the temperature map. So as we say before, the saturation is the humidity. So this is the jungle where it's very hot and humid. And most of the states, most of the historic Canaia is just warm-ish and moderate humidity. It's perfect living conditions. And we'll talk more about that later, how the perfect living conditions of Canaia allowed it to have such a good civilization. And now this is the ethno-linguistic map. So the vast majority of everyone speaks Canaian. And there are some people on these islands who speak Proto-Southern, that's more of a primitive language, and there's a minority of people here who speak Southwestern. Now, if you're wondering what Southwestern is, the Southwesterners are a group of people that don't have their own country. Maybe they should, but they just live in different parts of many countries. We talked about them in the Australis episode, and yeah, parts of them live in Canaia. So yeah, they're known as the Southwesterners, but their language is completely unlike any other language. And yeah, they don't really belong to anyone, they're just kind of floating around between different countries. So there's a divide in Canaia between land owned by the king, known as royal land, and the rest of it. So Canaia is technically classified as a monarchy, but they also have a parliament. We'll explain why that is in the history segment. So the royal land is land that's owned by the king. People can actually choose to give their land to the king. You can see most royal land is in the south. That's simply because the king lives in the south, and it's more convenient the closer you live to the king to give your land to the king. So people who opt to give their land to the king don't have to pay taxes to the government. So depending on how close you live to the king, it can be more advantageous. So yeah, Canaia is kind of like one country with two governments, and you can choose which one to live in. So this is the royal castle, and as you can see, most of the royal land is located pretty close to it. And this is the parliament way over here. The parliament isn't even located in historic Canaia, which is why a lot of people, especially in the south, choose to submit to the king rather than the parliament. And yeah, this is the parliament building. And the king has no official power over parliament, but sometimes the king can still have influence. When the king gives his opinion, some of the members of parliament will just vote according to whatever the king wants. I actually witnessed this. I went to speak to parliament once. Canaia was voting on whether to side with Durlan or Iapeta, and they initially voted on Iapeta, but then the king gave a big speech after listening to my speech, and he said that they should side with Durlan instead, and then a few of the representatives changed their vote. So yeah, this is the map of how much royal land there is, and often this corresponds to the religion. So yes, Canaia has its own religion called Canaiism. Canaiism is the belief that the ancestors of the king were actually dogs with divine powers. Canaiism has played a very important role in this Minecraft world, and most people think the religion originated in Canaia. So this is a map of how Canaiist each state is. This is the Canaian symbol, which you'll see all over Canaia. So Canaiism is most practiced in the south and less practiced in the north, and you can see it roughly corresponds to where the royal land is. Because, according to Canaists, the king is literally descended from divine ancestors. So I'm not going to explain all the beliefs of Canaiism, that can be in another video, but basically, yeah, they believe the king is descended from divine dogs that had supernatural powers. So now let's go into the history. Now, everyone agrees that there was an ancient kingdom of Canaia. Canaists believe the kingdom was ruled by their divine ancestors, who were the kings, the divine dogs, and more of the secular people in the north will say that it was just a lineage. There weren't any divine ancestors. So what religion you are kind of plays a role in whether or not you want to submit to the king. So eventually the kingdom fell when King Ender took over the world with his armies of mobs, just the way pretty much every other civilization fell. But then I, in the Green Plateau, defeated him, and I defeated him just like 50 years after he took over. So the people who were ruling Canaia before King Ender took over were still alive. These are the dogs that people say are divine. And I actually took them. I built Mount Olympus for them, which was a floating island, and they lived there for a while until they died in the Titan War shortly after, which kind of is why some people think they weren't divine, but some people think they were. So yeah, they died, and after that, Canaia became a province of the Green Plateau. Actually, that was before. Anyway, Canaia became a province of the Green Plateau, and part of it was what used to be the capital of the Blue Plateau in the Civil War, and because of that, I made the rest of it into a military province to make sure this region wouldn't rebel or anything. And yeah, so eventually the Green Plateau fell apart, and Canaia became its own country. So the capital was Boomington over here, so they were trying to organize a new government. They thought they should just make a secular democratic republic. They were going to call it the Republic of Canaia, but just before they finalized the Constitution, someone came back. The daughter of the old Canaian monarchy, and claimed to be the daughter of the divine dogs, named Hestia, came back, and she said she was the rightful heir to the throne. And a lot of people, especially the religious Canaists, agreed. So they crossed out the name Republic of Canaia and called it the Kingdom of Canaia instead. But some people, they had kind of already made a parliament, so the compromise was the Kingdom of Canaia would be a constitutional monarchy, where it'd be ruled both by a parliament and a monarchy who would kind of share power, and individuals could opt who they pay their taxes to. So yeah, it's kind of a delicate balance of power. Sometimes there are conflicts, but generally it's they kind of get along. So yeah, the Hestia built her own castle, not in the capital, but in this part, which is actually at the coordinates 0, 0. This is the capital of Canaia, and that's where the kings of the ancient kingdom of Canaia lived. So yeah, she was the first queen, and there have been monarchs descended from her. The current king is descended from Hestia, who is supposedly descended from the divine dogs. But the actual capital is over here in Boomington. So yeah, it's kind of one country, two governments. So then there was a war. We talked about this in the Australis episode. Durlan invaded all these countries, so did Sanoma. But eventually they got more allies. They pushed Durlan back into Durlan, and then Canaia got a lot more land. They got all this territory. And yeah, that's basically where we are today. But something recently that happened is they opened up the new Nether, which caused their economy to explode because everyone wanted to go here and get new resources. And right now they became the country with the most nominal wealth in the world, not per person, but the most wealth overall, even surpassing Durlan and Iapeta briefly. So yeah, they're crazy rich now because the Nether also has gold. So Canaia's been mining gold in the Nether, and they've been sharing it with their friends. And they got so rich they made the price of gold almost worthless, which crashed a lot of other countries' economies, and they're kind of mad at them for doing that now. So, yeah, now let's talk about some important sites in Canaia. If you choose to visit Canaia, some notable sites might include: this is the Parliament building. It's rainbow. It's pretty cool. I went there. These are the houses of former players that used to live in Boomington when it was the Blue Plateau. This is Kaboominator's house. This is Aquamarine's house. So yeah, this is the Nether House, which was built very recently. This has the Nether portal. This is one of the most important buildings to Canaia because that's how they get all their money. These are the ruins of Petercraft's old castle. I bombed it. And there's this volcano that belongs to a Tridonian cult and may be a portal to an ancient abyss demon. Anyway, this is one of Petercraft's old military bases, and I know I'm biased, but I think this is kind of ugly. You don't need to go here. There's this jungle island that was the capital of a different ancient empire, the Twilight Empire. There's the royal castle of Canaia, as we talked about. It's located at the coordinates 0, 0. so it's not going to be hard to find. There's this city of Lilla Göteborg, and I don't know how to pronounce this, it's a Swedish name. And there's this lighthouse which is off the coast of Lilla Göteborg, and there's the University of Canaia. There's this color townhouse in the island city of Mashasukte. There's Fort Ender, which is where we killed the Ender Dragon. There are a lot of important sites in Canaia. And, oh, I think I already did this. Whatever. Okay, so now let's talk about Canaia's relations with other countries. So, recently, they made an alliance with Durlan, and therefore they're also allies with Durlan's ally, Claytonia. So Durlan and Claytonia are their allies. They trade a lot of stuff. Canaia's been sharing their wealth with them to help them in the war and stuff, and they let both of these countries harvest gold in their territory, which is another reason why the price of gold is now worthless. So because they're allied with these countries, they're not so friendly with... Yeah, they have the Nether base, and these countries have been mining there. Because they're allied with Durlan, they're not so friendly with anyone who's allied with Iapeta. And that's a bit of a problem because 3 of their closest neighbors tend to favor Iapeta over Durlan. But since they've always had important trade, that doesn't stop them from trading. They're just kind of suspicious. As we talked about in the Australis episode, these countries also don't appreciate how the value of gold has dropped so much because the quantity of gold has gone up so much, thanks to Canaia. But they still trade because they've always been trading partners, and they're not going to stop doing that just because of the war. So yeah, Canaia's always been super important for one reason or another. They were the first civilization. They may have had divine rulers for 3,000 years. They're home of the coordinates 00, the origin. They're the spot where we killed the Ender Dragon. And now they were the home of the Nether update, and they affected the whole global economy. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I know that Canaia will always have a very important impact on the whole world. Stay tuned. Claytonia is coming up next.